We're live. Welcome to the Chicken Box, man. Jay, you click the live button so
No,
fast. I was
it wasn't
thinking,
me. It wasn't me.
caught me off guard. Asia, you ain't give me a countdown or anything. Anyway, it's a beautiful day. Welcome everybody to the Chicken Box. I'm your co-host, Impeccable, along with Jay Jackson. Or Jackson, am I saying your name right? I remember you did a blended thing, right?
J.
With
Jackson Rao. Is it like
Jay
wow, but with an R.
Jay Jackson Rao. This is the Chicken Box. If you've never been on here, it's powered by the Afro American newspaper, the oldest family owned black media company in the country, heading to 134 years this August. Happy birthday, Black business, Black media company. We created a chicken box back in during the pandemic. It was going to be live, but this is a place where you speak your truth. We have wonderful guests, wonderful people, wonderful issues, and we talk about things that mainstream might not even be thinking about, but we know that it's important to our community. Jay, how's it been going, man? I've been traveling the world. I missed you guys for a second.
Yeah, we're doing well, doing well. So glad to have you back. So this episode is promising to be another very unique and interesting conversation. So I'm excited about it.
Man, it is black people versus systems. We haven't had the verses in a minute. Like, let's bring verses back. Black people versus systems. Who stole my innocence? Man, that can go a lot of different places. We have a special guest, actually. There's a book out there, if you haven't heard of Who Stole My Innocence. And we have the pleasure of having the author along with us so we can find out more about this story and really talking to speak about black people versus systems. So Jay, would you like to introduce our special guest today?
Absolutely. This week it's Dr. Eugene L. Moore, who is an educator, legal scholar, author, and nonprofit leader who holds a PhD, a JD, and MBA. He is president and CEO of Assurance Creek Youth Program, Inc., and the author of 8 books, including Who Stole My Innocence, 7 Stories of Wrongful Incarceration, and The School System That Failed Generations. Drawing on more than 30 years' experience in education, law, and community advocacy, Moore examines how schools, legal institutions, and social systems shape opportunity, justice, and outcomes in African communities. Welcome to the show, Dr. Moore.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Dr. Eugene Moore, it is a pleasure to have you on the chicken box. We'll get into it later, but he is now a family friend. He's part of the family. So we got to show him some love, guys, and congratulations on just graduating from law school as well. So he had, when they say more degrees than the thermometer, he has them. Matter of fact, they're gonna have to create a new thermometer for him. But in short, man, what inspired you to write this book? Because we're gonna talk about the book. Because I mean, we could talk about you for like 5 shows, but let's let's get into black people versus the system, versus systems, and your book, Who Stole My Innocence, which my wife just gladly dropped on my desk.
Awesome. So I think that as it relates to the book, I have the fortunate ability of going to school for so many years, 18 years in post-secondary education. And I was volunteering at a state prison, and I met someone there that was innocent. And I realized that all the education that I had, all the classrooms I taught in, there was nothing I could do for this particular person. And that person had a similar story to some of the stories that are featured in the book. An accusation that was unfounded, legal maneuvers that were made to suppress evidence. And as a result of that, still currently in prison for nearly 30 years. So that was my inspiration.
Wow.
Hmm. Well,
We know
it's a
we know it's a lot of that. Go ahead, Jay. Jump in.
no. What I was going to say is that is certainly a reason to be spurred into this work. And so I guess let's start with you. Um, After 30 years, you worked in education, law, and community advocacy. At what point did you realize those 3 things weren't actually three, disparate, ideas, but they were actually all one thing, sort of ending up in a similar outcome?
I think that, as I stated in the book, I think people like to look at stories of success like myself. And by doing that, I then believe that we've made such leaping changes, over the past, several years. But I was very intentional about the book where I kind of picked a 100-year span or nearly century span of legal cases that prove that we're very much in the same situation that we were several years ago. And so the intersection of all of those things is very important because it shows that when that student goes into that classroom expecting to be taught, expecting to learn, expecting to have great outcomes, it's not happening for us. And the question is why? We hear these narratives or stereotypes that African Americans are lazy, they're this, they're that. But when you start to really understand what is the engine behind these outcomes, it's really a system that people can't necessarily see. And so this book tries to help people see that system and how it has produced very great outcomes for people of color.
The system. Let's go behind the veil a little bit about the system, Dr. Moore. Have you cracked the code?
I would say that the code is definitely been cracked. And one of the first thing you must do to crack the code, figuratively or perhaps even literally, is to no longer seek validation from a system that never intended your inclusion.
Mm.
And I know, I'm not sure how many listeners we have. Some people might be argumentative to that and say, oh my God, this person is, anti-American. They're anti our achievement. They're anti how far we've come. But when you look at the system in its totality and what it produced early on to now, those outcomes are very similar. And so just because we have more educated African Americans, more educated people of color, more people that are own homes or own businesses, doesn't mean that the system is not doing fundamentally what it was designed to do, and that is to suppress and to keep out certain individuals. And so that's still happening in 2026. And a lot of us don't want to grapple with that because we like to believe, hey, I live in a nice house, I live in a nice community. And when we start to look and survey our own families, we would see what's happening here. Why is this level of success only being regulated to a few and not to the masses?
No, that's a very good point, and actually, it kind of leads into a question that I had, which is through your research through these 7 cases, and I'm sure you've done research into many others. Do you find that the system sort of? I mean, I guess if we're really going to be specific about this, and I think we should be, a lot of this is like school to prison pipeline sort of conversations, right? Do you think that system is fundamentally poorly designed, that African Americans end up in the system, or do you think that the system is created by design? Because I think some people think, oh, well, things are kind of bad, and then people just kind of fall into it, and then others think that this is a very deliberate system. And I just interested in where you kind of fall on that.
That is a phenomenal question. And I want to be clear that the true answer to that question is found in the book, but I'll give a snippet of it. It is definitely a system by design. It's by design. And it's very hard to grapple that such a system will be created solely for the purpose of hurting or harming a particular group. But that is exactly what the system does. And so it's hard to grapple it when you think about it, but it's exactly what happens daily. And so when we look at this book, specifically, like when we start with the Scottsboro boys, that's 1931. We have 9 young men boarding a train. An accusation comes. They're all found guilty, right? Later exonerated, many years later. But now when you go further into the system, you see that the outcomes are still producing the same outcomes, but the measures in which one goes to produce those outcomes are different. Sometimes it's going to be forced interrogations, forced confessions, Sometimes it's going to be evidence that is not allowed to come in. So when I'm thinking about the case in which was a catalyst for me even writing the book, evidence was not allowed to come in. And so you can literally find someone guilty when you don't allow evidence. I'm talking about a key witness that says this didn't happen, but not allowed to come in. And then so much time goes by, that particular witness dies. And so now you're still stuck in jail, innocent, with no one really willing to hear your case. And then when you think about the early thought process that happens in schools, I mean, we think about kids. Think about any kid you know, whether you are a parent of your own, or you know someone who has children. What child at 3, 4 years old says, "I want to grow up and be a criminal. I want to not have any goals in life." Something is happening to produce those goals. So when you think about those realities, not goals, when you think about redlining, or you think about war veterans coming home, African Americans not being able to find housing, when you think about jobs, these are systems that are constantly telling you that you don't belong, right? And so that kid who's 5 years old going to school, at some point, something turns on that kid. First, he's adorable. Oh, little Johnny's great.
Right.
And then Johnny starts to grow, and now Johnny becomes a threat. Something is happening here. And we have to not be so comfortable in our own individual success, because I will tell you, African Americans are geniuses. We are very successful, right? But it's an individualistic thing, right? So we can look to the Oprahs, we can look to the great people who are billionaires, but what's happening in our communities around this great nation? What's happening, and why is it happening?
Right. I just quickly, and then I'm going to pass to my co-host. Sorry, but I just want to tag onto what you just said there. I do think that there is a level of quote unquote rugged individualism that exists outside of our community that is kind of pushed as that, like, that is the way in which the country should work, and Black people have never had that ability to be that way, right? We cannot all be separated and all be total individuals and then all succeed on our own. It just fundamentally has never been that case. And I do think, to your point, if the system is designed to kind of pick people off, and I do think it's purposeful, by the way, like, it's designed to pick people off, the only way that you fix that is a collective understanding of what's going on and working against it. But if everybody is on their own, right, it's easy to kind of separate people and just remove them from the system and then put them into this pipeline. I mean, a very famous quote by I forget his name, but it's basically the idea is, if Black people turn their back on the country, they will die, right? And that's true, right? We have to be cognizant as a community of what is going on. To your point, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
If you just tuned in, guys, this is Black People versus Systems. We have a special guest, Dr. Eugene Moore, on with us talking about his book, Who Stole My Innocence, which you can find where, Dr. Moore? Is it all places?
Wherever books are sold. So it's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all online retailers.
You said the code is inside the book. You know what I mean? Like, but everybody's not going to read the book, and everybody's not going to watch this. And you didn't do it to sell books. You put it in the book to unlock minds. Like, I'm trying to twist it out of you. I already have the book, but you never know who it's going to help, and I think that's why we do a lot of things, because you get a chance to. We're not God. We're not going to help everybody, but the people that we can influence and come and inspire, come in contact with.
If I had to, sorry for my interruption, if I had to kind of give, like, hey, what's a key tenet? How do you operate within the system? How can you be successful in this system?
All right, let's go there.
The best way to do that is to die to validation of a system that never intended for you to be a part of it. See, social media is a phenomenal tool. It's a phenomenal tool. It's a phenomenal tool for businesses. It's a phenomenal tool for, you know, the founders of Facebook understood, hey, listen, we want to make connections with people that we haven't talked with in years. I mean, it's a great thing of bringing people together, but it also inherently can keep you extremely distracted. You can desire to want to have Fendi, Gucci, all the name brands, all of these different things at the same time while your community is suffering. And because you can afford that bag, that home, that or this, you think that things have changed. And you start to realize that you're more of an anomaly than the common standard. And so I think that if you want to truly buck the system, for lack of a better term, then you must suspend your notions of validation from a system and create your own table.
I agree 100%. The good book, which I'll say to me is the Bible, said the poor will be among us always,
Yes.
right? And the question as an African American community, and this is what the Afro has championed for 133 years, is what kind of difference are you going to make? Because according to the good book, the poor are always going to be with us. But that doesn't mean that we don't get a chance to change the mindset, because you don't have to be poor.
I agree. You don't.
Right?
You don't.
I mean, you don't have, like, because we have so many stories. I mean, I have friends from the projects to the pulpit, from the projects to the boardroom, from the projects to CEOs, to great leaders in school system, you know, to principals, you name it. But it was usually somebody else who unlocked that person, who told them and believed in them and said, listen, you're more than this, whatever mindset that you have now, and allowed them to shift, to move. Any comment on that? Before do that, and then I'm gonna take a couple of questions from Marilyn and Dana too.
I will say this. I think what has happened in schools, and now we see something happening with schools with suppression of history. But beyond that suppression, African Americans have been regulated by the system to think of themselves between 1619 and 1865. If you have a slave mentality, you will always be seeking freedom. That is a product of the system. Very, very genius approach. So we have to understand that Africans, where we are descended from, we were a very powerful people. We were so rich, so wealthy, that researchers will tell you that it was more wealth than Bezos. That's the wealth that we had. We were able to be agricultural geniuses. We were able to do things that in other parts of the world were not able to be done. We were mathematicians. We're all of these things. We're not criminals. We're not poor dads. We're not single mothers. We're not those things. These are things that they report, right? And if you report it long enough, you'll begin to be regulated by the system, and your desires and wants will be contingent upon what the system offers to you. So if I have you in a community where there are food deserts, you have no access to fresh fruits and vegetables, but yet I then tell you that Black folks have type 2 diabetes. We don't get to the root cause. What's happening there? Why is the access not there, right? And so when we go further back in history, we need to go back to when we still are, but when we were a dominant group, right? A dominant group, and we had great power and great intellect. That still happens today, but we think it's just so isolated. And so that's what we need to do.
Well, let's go to Maryland, and thank you everybody who's chiming in. Put in where you're from too. We'd like to know where you're from. No, I think this one.
Yes.
Maryland has a lot. Go ahead, Maryland. I mean, Dr. Eugene. Should we have stayed separate as a people? Is Maryland's question.
That is a great question, and that is kind of the ideology between Du Bois and, Booker T. Washington. I think that it parallels to what some people say compliance, right? If we just comply in a traffic stop, things will work out for us. We just need to comply. Well, history has shown us that compliance is not changing it. And so when you think about Black folks being separate, building their own, history will tell us that in those instances, things were destroyed, right? Communities were burned to the ground. And so that doesn't mean that we can't do those same things in modern history, but it's understanding that we need to have enough wealth, enough power, that even if opposition comes, we can withstand that opposition. Because we hear about communities that were burned down. What about the communities that were burned down and then resurrected again and then still thrived and are still here today? So we can't allow the system, which is always going to react to our excellence, to make us not continue in the same vein of excellence. So even when we receive opposition, we still must resist. And so I believe that whether it be separate or integrated, whatever you choose to believe, I think you still have to make sure you are not succumbing to validation from the system, because the system cannot be reformed. A reformed system means that we're going to reform it and change some elements of it. The system needs to be eradicated in order for us to really get some traction as far as true equity. We talk about equality. I can put a Black person and a white person in the room, but that doesn't mean they have the same level of equity, the same chance, the same level of opportunity. So it's beyond that. It's much more deeper and sinister than just that, than equality.
Does it reverse if the room is different?
Say it again.
So does it reverse if the room is different? Meaning a Black person and a white person are in the room interviewing at the Afro. Does it change?
I think the when you have a diverse room, it's always better. So one thing about law school, and I'll be very candid here, when you have Black people studying the law, we are able to bring some things to the conversation, that our experience lends to how we will interpret that law or interpret that statute, right? And so when you don't have diversity in the boardroom, you don't have diversity in all of these things, the outcomes won't be the same. See, the system likes diversity of money. They love the fact that Black people spend billions of dollars, but giving them access is what the system does not really account for. So those are things we have to understand, that it's important to be in the room. It's important to be authentic in that room as well. So oftentimes when we get success, we start doing things that we typically, maybe perhaps our money or our access didn't allow us to do. But I'm not upset about people doing things and taking elaborate vacations, having a yacht. None of that means anything to me. What matters to me is that when you're on that yacht, when you're on that prestigious golf course, such as Tiger Woods, you have to tell the story about how they didn't want you to play on that golf course, because that's the story. If you don't tell that story, Tiger Woods, then what's happening there? We have to tell the story.
Right. It's truth without context, right?
Yes.
And I've long said, truth without context is basically a lie. It's kind of meaningless, right? I want to talk. I want to go back to the wrongful incarceration aspect for a moment. I don't think wrongful incarceration is just a legal failure. It is, but I don't think it's just a legal failure. It's also a community wound that doesn't really heal when somebody gets out, right? You hear someone's been in jail for 30 years for a crime they didn't commit. They give them, here's $1 million, on your way, right? What does that reentry look like to you for people who get out and aren't getting what they receive? What are they missing that they should be receiving when they get out?
That too is a phenomenal question, and I think that is a whole nother tenet that needs to be further explored, because nothing really is new. Okay, now for those who are believers, they'll find this in the Bible, right? Nothing's really new. Things are happening over and over again. Different types of of scenarios, but the same type of outcomes. And so when we go back to slavery, it was very important for us to beat a man in front of his wife and children. We had to show that he was powerless. History is unyielding. It tells you that people were mesmerized by the stature of Africans, by their physique, by their look, and their strength. And so we have to break that, both physically and mentally. And so what happens when people are released back into the system that they remember 30 years ago, but really hasn't changed much, and it's added some new devices to help recreate the same types of outcomes, they feel a little lost, right? And I do not, under any circumstance, want to make this conversation political, but there are images that we must grapple with. We have an African American president who has attended the best schools in the nation, who's, air quotes, articulate, who has a wife and children. And we still say to this man that he's not good enough. Yet juxtaposed to another president who might not have the same credential, same qualifications, but perhaps what does he have? He has whiteness.
Yep.
And so we have to understand, where is this coming from? Who created this? And there are people who they're very successful and they're like, I'm tired of talking about race. Everything's always about race. It's not black or white. I hear you. But I have to challenge you to understand, if it is not about race for you, what has it been for us? It's always been that way. The reason that I'm in my Maserati and I'm pulled over, being questioned as to whose car is this? To opening my door of my nice home to say, show me some identification. Or if we don't have selective amnesia, can you provide me your birth certificate? Because I don't believe you have your papers. The system is always signaling to those who understand it that we're still controlling every bit of it. And so we have to, as African Americans, say, I get it. I'm not going to cry for your system to let me in. I'm not going to beg you for your validation. I'm not going to pick it and do all those things. I'm not saying that demonstrations are not good, but we have to move beyond the demonstration and demonstrate the outcomes that we want. There's enough wealth within the Black community. What would happen if Blacks said, I'm not going to spend any money today? What would happen if it was around election time and the people said, these are things I want? And instead of selling for the basketball gymnasium, we might say we want the computer lab, or we want jobs, or we want this or that. So we have to take control of the future that we want.
It's a great point. By the way, you and I had slightly talked about this offline, just some inside baseball. And your point goes to, and I remember the term now, respectability politics, right? Which is this idea that we need to, if we wear a three-piece suit and we march and we say a certain thing and a certain phrase and we don't bring our voices up too high, that'll solve everything and we'll be respected. Meanwhile, that didn't stop us from being beaten in the 60s, and it hasn't stopped us from being, wrongfully incarcerated today, so on and so forth. So I agree with you. And just this idea that we should just, I guess the thought process is like, go along to get along, or as long as you follow this blueprint or these rules that have been laid out for you by a different community that historically has not had our best interest in mind, to say the least, that somehow it will suddenly fix itself, or that people who have been marginalized for many, many years, it is their fault in the reason why they are being marginalized. And I think pointing that out, and it is a difference that has a massive distinction. So, thank you for your point there.
You're welcome.
Man, you're stirring up the bush. If you just tuned in, this is the Chicken Box powered by the Afro. These are the conversations that we need to have sometimes because we go, we lottie dow and be in our own world. And really, our community is in a different space. And sometimes I like to say we're selfish because we're only really thinking about our own bubble instead of our own community. I mean, in God's family, it's not really black or white, but it is black and white in America and across the world. I believe love wins, but you still have to. I'm just on the mindset thing, Dr. Moore, of just as a man or woman think of, so is he or she, and it's what are we thinking? The ice is better over here. You know what I mean? You have better things. I mean, because at the end of the day, the comparison, what does that really do? Because everybody was created who they are individually to operate, and it's usually the people who are jealous and are in fear who have created these systems. These are basically fear-based systems uh, that are instilled because my granddaughter, when they're in nursery school playing together with with their white friends, they don't really have that yet until somebody implants that seed in their brain that black people are bad or something. You agree with that at all?
I agree.
I think it starts that. Yeah, I mean, I think it starts in the households of the parents, and then it just keeps duplicating throughout until you have an experience that breaks that.
It's always very it's always a risk that you take when you mention names of individuals because people have opinions of those individuals. So whatever you say after you mention their name, it could be lost. But I'm going to take a leap of faith here and mention two names. LeBron James is notably one of the best basketball players that has ever played the game. Now, this is not the time to say if he's a GOAT or not, but we can say that he is one of the best players that has ever touched the basketball. And if you think about what was happening to him in his youth, growing up playing ball, they labeled him before he ever stepped foot into the NBA as the king. He was a phenom. But the moment he began to talk about his identity, his belief system, he needs to shut up and dribble.
Yep.
We have to understand the system is always going to autocorrect, even its greatest success stories. So we have to understand, are we going to buy into that? Or are we going to say, let me keep moving forward in fighting for justice? Because if you buck to the system, if you succumb rather to the system, then nothing changes. And most of us, we will succumb to the system because it's paying us a fraction of the money it has and the money that we're owed. Mm-hmm. But we're happy because our lawn is well manicured, we have a pond in the back, and we have great neighbors and no crime, right? So we think. The biggest crime that has happened, in my opinion, is to still a culture of another group. That's the biggest crime you can do because I walk through the world not necessarily knowing my identity. I know the identity that you manufacture. So LeBron James is a great example of what it means for someone to be very high and then very low. And there can be a turn. And there's no other perhaps greatest figure in modern history as it relates to journalists, TV, than Miss Oprah Winfrey. She's great. Until she begins to speak on topics that do not align with the system, right? And so it doesn't matter who you pick anybody. If they start to uncover the system, then they will be a casualty of said system, unless they have built enough capital that the system can't necessarily remove them, or they're in influence. And so I believe that I saw somewhere in the chat somewhere, someone said, we are our worst enemies. And sometimes we regurgitate phrases that were given to us. Well, we are not our worst enemies. In fact, we were talking to each other. We were signaling to each other. We were using spirituals to communicate escape. The fact that African-American women have a large share of degree attainment, we have success stories, but that success story is always quite manipulated so we can stop trying, right? So when you say that African-American women are the most educated sector, yeah, within Black people, but not within the system. That's not true. It's not factually true. So we kind of hang on to these things because we have been taught to not like each other. So I'm going to look at Impeccable and say, well, he has that. Now he has to do one or two things for me to be able to be cool with him. He either has to share or I have to be better than him, right? And if I can get neither one of those two, then we're at odds. And that's not how the system works.
I knew I did not like you, and that's it, Dr. Moore. I'm just kidding. Anyway, listen. Thank you, everybody who's commenting. This is the Chicken Box, powered by the Afro American newspaper. If you just tuned in, we having this really needs a part 2, 3, and 4 of this conversation as we peel the different layers of the systems. Because when you look at all of the other groups, the Korean, the Jewish, not the Hispanics so much, but those other groups who've carved themselves out, they do what they want to do inside there and inside their group for their people, and it's never any problem. But as soon as we even whisper that we're coming together, it's like it's ready to be an uprising all of a sudden, all over again. And I think the whisper or the news, the media, and the government, they're in cahoots together in that system to keep us down, and the banks. All right, let me just put that out there. Government, the media, not the Black media, and the banks are all in cahoots to block us out of the system. And we need to wake up, like you said, Dr. Moore, and stop worrying about what these people say. Because as soon as we come together, the louder they're going to get. And then they're going to take one or two of us down, or three of us, and the media will talk about it let's say the other media will talk about it forever until the point you're sick of hearing it. And then we go back into brainwash mode. And I'm not saying everybody, we're just talking about our community as a whole. And I think today, even talking about this is going to make at least some families take a second look at what their family ideology is, what their family beliefs are, and what their family mindset is. Because if this is circling all these years, the same thing happened over and over again, we need the code, Dr. Moore. And the code is always the cornerstone of the community, has always been the family. However you look at the family, it doesn't always have to be blood, but the family has to get it together and get it right. And then when each family probably pieces their piece together, then I think we bring those families together and the community then begins to flourish. $1 billion is going somewhere, right?
Going somewhere.
It's not going up. It's not going with us all the time.
There are two things there. One is you have to ask yourself, why are they or the system so angry with us? I'm glad you asked. The system is angry because the system knows the truth. It knows the truth of its theft. So I guarantee you, if Jay came to your home and he was behind coming to your home and stealing your grand piano valued at $40,000, and you haven't seen Jay in a couple of years, Jay still will be uncomfortable around you because he's aware of the theft that he has placed upon you. And so this is why when Black people, even in the work setting, start talking amongst each other, people are saying, what are you talking about? Are you trying to come together to overtake or request or demand something from a system that has placed you outside of it? And so that's what happens. That's why that tension is there. No one wants to really talk about why that tension is there. It's because you stole it. You stole it. The land you own is stolen. The labor was stolen, right? And so if we're talking about it, for everyone's in different sectors. We're talking about higher ed. We're talking about the private sector. The same thing happens. If a Black person has a lot of credentials and they're applying for a six-figure job, the people have implicit bias. They'll say, why do they want this job? Right? Why do they want this job? So now I've done the things that you told me to do. I've gotten the degrees, I've gotten the experience, but now you're saying I lack experience. Now on the reverse of that, let's say I'm trying to climb and I'm trying to get to that experience. Then you say, I don't have enough experience. Where does that work for us? So that means that we need to have places like Afro, companies that are designed to spread the truth, to do justice, to do what I would call is right by God, but everyone doesn't believe. But by doing that, you're going to slowly start chipping away at this system because you're going to have a body of work that's going to withstand the test of time. Be it whatever you make, and I know we might lose some people by me even making this statement, but I'm going to make it. I guarantee you 100 years from now, we will be talking about Donald J. Trump. 100 years from now, we'll be talking about Oprah Winfrey, though. I can give Black folks the same amount of money as their white counterpart, and why is their story being suppressed? So it's not just a race thing. The system is so intricate. It's just race, it's class, it's access, it's so many things that's coming together as one. And I think that the race talk sometimes gets us distracted. If I was willing to pay you $100 million contract, and I don't particularly like Black people, would you take the job? Like, people don't understand business. Like, I don't need you to like me. I need you to pay me what I'm worth. We're looking for people to like us and to validate us, and that's where we lose every time.
Well, I was about to say, I'm taking that 100 million. You hear me?
I want you to take it. I want you to take it. I want you to.
But it allows me to impact and help, because you really can't help anybody else until you're doing well yourself. Because the person on the street who's homeless and hungry, they really can't see anything but homeless and hunger until those basic needs are met. And if we don't have the foundational income to even help those basic needs, everything else is like background noise until those needs are met. Anyway, man, this conversation is getting fantastic. We have a little bit of time left. We're on the Chicken Box, powered by the prestigious Afro-American News. And we just called it the Chicken Box. If you're from the Baltimore area, I didn't say that earlier, you know what a chicken box is. It's 4 fried wings with salt, pepper, ketchup in the box, and some potato wedges or French fries. And we call it in Baltimore half and half. Other people call it Arnold Palmer, but it is the same thing: sweet tea and sweet lemonade. And if you're hungry like me, that's where the Chicken Box came from, because we were going to have these great conversations around eating chicken, because we found out whenever you got too mad, you just take a bite of the chicken and you could just woosah for a minute. But you have to take a piece of the virtual chicken now and woosah. But Who Stole My Innocence? Dana Peck, my wife and your classmate, asked the question, what was the emotional difficult part of writing this book?
That's a great question. I think that whenever you're writing a book, or even if you're a pastor, the best thing is to place yourself in the narrative. Everything society tells me I should forget. According to statistics, me having a PhD, a JD, and an MBA, places me in less than 1% of people who hold those 3 terminal degrees. When you account for African Americans, it's 0.0000 something. So it's very small. And so society says, Eugene, you've accomplished some things. But I think the emotional toll of the writing this book is going back to my childhood, which is featured in the book. I get out of a car with my mother, and I am stopped and frisked because I fit the description. And because I was always a very inquisitive child, I asked the officer, so who are you looking for? And they were looking for someone that was in their 20s, 30s. I'm 14. How is that? Right? And so even at an early age, I knew that something was happening. My mother played a very integral part, and my grandmother played a very integral part in my upbringing. And that's going to bring up something about fathers too. I'll talk about that in a second. But I always had to play it safe because I wasn't afforded mistakes as a Black person. If I made a mistake too soon and too early, it could cement my future. And so what was emotionally toiling is that I had to go back to a space of trauma in order to bring information to African Americans, to anyone who's willing to accept the information, to say, we're still here. I know we like to believe we're not, but we are still here. And when you think about you talked about this impeccable, probably 5 to 10 minutes ago, about the family unit. Slavery was the whole thing about separating the family. Mm-hmm. And so what do we do with the family? And I'm not trying to create a debate over Black men versus Black women. That plays directly into the system. But what I will say is that in slavery, we beat that man in front of that wife, in front of that child. When that mother had that child, we separate her from that child. Okay. And so now we have a society telling us what success looks like. And we are trying to attain some of the success, but the options for that success are very limited. So we don't have the CEO that we can look at. We don't have all these things in our communities because they have regulated us to ghettos, to urban centers, the new name, right? And so we don't have those things. And now the father is outside the home. The system is applauding ferociously because they understand that if you put the father in the home, the outcomes will be different. Because the single Black mother can produce a Eugene Moore, but Eugene Moore is an anomaly. I will take anomaly over a constant reproduction of success. And that's what a strong nuclear family will do. So how do we appease the African-American woman? The system gives her financial support to operate as her quasi-father in the home. Welfare, WIC, all those different things, support systems. We're the only group that cheers over what it means to be single and independent. And once again, I say I don't like to mention people's names, but I just like to say how the system works. I know I might offend some people because they just love certain people, and I love a person as well. But Beyonce had a great song, All Single Ladies. Last I checked, Beyonce is married to a billionaire. So, not saying everyone should be married, because that's not the debate I'm trying to have here. But what I'm trying to say, that family, when it is disjointed, will produce outcomes, and the system knows it. So we must keep it disjointed.
That's a mic drop right there, right? Then Jay, jump in. We got final words. We got 5 minutes coming up. We thank everybody for your comments. Marilyn gets the comments of the day.
Absolutely.
Feel free to share. Before I say that, Jay, just feel free to share the little share button, the arrow that goes that way on your whatever thing. Share this link because somebody needs to hear it. Absolutely. I know I needed to hear it. But Jay, last question, then let's get on the box.
Okay. So my last question is, this show episode is titled Black People versus Systems, right? Which frames a fight, which I think is a necessary fight, right? Obviously, we've talked about over the last hour, this system is designed specifically to benefit one group and to obviously be a detriment to Black people very specifically. Like we don't even need to we don't need to use the hush tones about it at all. In your 30 years of work, do you think that the system, or I don't even want to say the system as far as what is detrimental to Black people, but just the system of the education system and where it should work for everyone, right? Let's say the general system that is like, this is the good one, like this is the one for white folks type of thing. Is that system, even that system, beyond repair because of how that was even fundamentally created, that you couldn't say, okay, let's stop all of the like prison to pipeline stuff. Let's make sure that we take this system that is working for everyone else and, you know, make this equal across everyone. Is the system so broken fundamentally for everyone that it is beyond repair? Or do you think there is an ability to sort of break the wrong things that are going on to us and bring us into the system that seems to work for them? Or do you need a full scale, like root and branch kind of rip it up situation?
I know some people. I'm not running for a political office, so I don't have to be say a certain thing. Well, I will say the system is broken beyond repair. It is. Yeah. When you think about the framers of the Constitution, we hold these truths that all men are created equal. Now, it's important for us to understand that in that particular time, Black people and women were property. But now we look what's happened 250 years later. That property aspect of the African American body is still there. It's called the central booking number. It's called the infractions that happen in school that early on teach a child that you're guilty, you're bad, you're indifferent. And so until we understand that that's what it was designed to do, a reform of that doesn't make you unsee that. So we technically need a new system that is a fair system for all people. Because the moment that we start to believe in these things like meritocracy, the harder I work, the better the outcome. It's just not true. People are working very hard, they still don't get the opportunity. I mean, and so if you look at anyone in their success, African American person particularly, they will tell you that it was very hard to get where they were at, even though they did all the things, right? But in that same system, someone can be rewarded for felonious activity. We'll leave it at that.
Right.
The system says that. So how can you see me in a system where you never intended for me to be? So repairing it is just not, it's not going to work. This is not a building that you can put some asphalt or put some things on it, some concrete or whatever you do to fix buildings. It needs to be dismantled and resurrected to now intend what, in theory, the framers wanted. Because when you have to amend something, it simply means you were not included. That's what an amendment is.
No, that's a great point, an excellent point. I've often sort of grappled with that question of, can you fix the system in which it exists, or do you need it to be completely removed? And my thought has always been, it has to be rebuilt because we were not a part of the conversation in which it was created. And so if you're not a part of the conversation, if we're not all sitting at a table going, how are we going to do this to make sure we're all included, then it's fundamentally missing gaps that they cannot see, right? You know, like just to your earlier point, which you made the point of, when African Americans are in law schools and things like that, they can bring conversations about the Black experience that non-Black folks, white people, you know, whoever, they just have blind spots, right? Whether intentional or not. And if you do not have all of these people at the table to create the system, then inevitably there will be gaps in it that leave those people who are not creating it to benefit from it. Like it's just fundamental. And that could even be, by the way, not an on purpose thing. If you build a system with a bunch of guys and you're like, this is how we're going to do it, right? I mean, case in point, it's going to seem like a super silly one, but it's very real. You ever been in an office building and wonder why it's so cold? Like women are always like wearing sweaters because they designed the temperature that they use, the standard temperature in office buildings around the country was designed for men. It was designed for men, right? And during a time when men wore three-piece suits and everything else. When you take that and you take that system and you go, all right, now that's in like the 40s, and then you go to 2026, and the people are like, I'm freezing in here. Yeah, because we don't all wear three-piece suits, and we're all not, 6'2", 250-pound men. Like, there is a difference. If women are not included in that, and small people like me, if they're not included in that original design, then it doesn't work 50, 60 years later. And it's the same thing. I mean, it's a silly, it's a silly example, but it is a very pertinent one, is if we do not have people helping to build the design, they cannot benefit from it. They will be left out. Just another.
Let me say this one thing in relation to what you just said. Let's go to school. If I know you've attended college and you're a graduate of college, I already know that you're going to know some people. You're going to know William Shakespeare. You're going to know Nietzsche. You're going to know all these people, but you don't have to know anything Black to be successful.
Correct.
How can that work? And then you have to look at it in very simple terms. If you've ever broken your bone, you have an ankle sprain or something like that, and now you have to use accessible doors. You never had to do that before, but now you understand it differently because you're a part of the thing. And so how can a system which excludes say that it's now going to magically include?
Yeah,
it's not going to work.
Write that quote down, y'all. How can a system that excludes magically include? Yeah. Good God Almighty. Anyway, this is the chicken box. I'm calling for a part 2. Somebody out there, the Black woman PhD says she needs a part 3 and a part 4. I'm in for part 2. Jay's in for part 2. The Afro is in for part 2. We've been having these conversations when they thought we couldn't read in 1892, when less than 4% of African Americans could read back then. Our great-great-grandfather decided to start a newspaper while everybody else was a blacksmith. Who knew? Who knew 133 years later we would still be having these conversations? And it's because what you just said, the system is broke, right? And even when we create this new system, which I hope we create, I think there's going to still be some of our brothers and sisters who are going to be, nah, I'm not with it. That's just, you already know these people. I mean, I'm just saying, let's go back to the red circle. I'm not even going to give them any advertising. Store that everybody knows that we were just not going to for a minute. It hurt them financially, whether everybody was with it or not. There was enough people who said, you know what, we're going to not go to this store with the red circle. And let's see how y'all see how that fits your board of directors or your profit margins, and it made an impact. But everybody couldn't lock into the concept. The question is, will we all ever really come together? The question is probably no. But if a core amount of us do, and it's making a difference, I think the ones that don't will change their mind. But if the core never comes together, because maybe you hate who started it. Dr. Moore started this Who Stole My Innocence new system. I don't like Dr. Moore. So now, you know what I mean? He think he all this and that, or whatever else they're going to say about you, Dr. Moore. That's not going to keep you from stopping it if that's your calling. So is it?
No, that's not going to stop me. Because we only have a small point of time in life. We have that beginning time and that dash. And my goal is just to work in the dash.
All right, well, let's work on this new system because I'm tired of talking. I don't care. Anybody know me? I care nothing. I don't even care what nobody thinks. My wife maybe, but to a point, honey. But you know what I mean? I'm gonna be impeccably Kevin Peck for the rest of my life, and that's who I am. Okay, so let's get on the box. Marilyn, Dana, where the brothers at? Desiree. If you listen,
I think it's mostly just the three of us.
Well, other people listening, not everybody comment. Oh, Denzel, okay. Denzel, we represent for the brothers. If you're watching this live or if you're watching it on a replay, I hope you share it or at least take one thing out of it. and at least start to begin to think differently. But Jay Jackson, you are officially on the box. Final words on this topic: Black people versus systems. And the great book, guys, go get it. Who stole my? You said the code is in here, okay? Who stole my? And they said you want to really, really baffle us? Put it in the book, okay? Hello, somebody. All right, go ahead, Jay.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Moore. We really appreciate your time. It was a very good conversation. I thought it went in depth in ways that I personally appreciated. So I thank you for your time. So what like you mentioned you know, people don't have to know about Black philosophers or things like that, but they're if you go to college or you get your law degree or something, you do have to know about these other people. And you mentioned Nietzsche, actually, which I thought was pretty cool. But and it just reminded me of his idea. He's a German philosopher. The idea of the Superman, right, which is a person who represents, or the Übermensch is the German word, represents an evolved, ideal individual who overcomes conventional societal norms, rejects herd morality, and creates his own life-affirming values. And that, to me, is exactly what you're advocating, right? This idea of building people up, Black people very specifically, who break these shackles of what we have been told we can be, the max of what we can be. And we have been told that through not just rhetoric, but also through these systems of false incarceration, school to prison pipeline. These things are reinforced, and you are advocating for breaking those. And I think bringing up Nietzsche is exactly correct, which is we do need to understand that we can be more than we are told that we are, and we actually are already there. But we just need to sort of reaffirm that for ourselves and our community. So I appreciate your time. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I'll hop on the box, Dr. Moore, and I'll let you go last with final words. Black people versus systems. I am going to say that you need to start with a belief system. And really nothing in my mind is going to correct until your belief system is in correct alignment with who in fact created you. Whatever you want to think, whoever created the bicycle, you can ride it all around your lawn and think it's going to cut it. It's not. The system will be the bicycle riding on the lawn, but the people or the creator of the lawnmower, what's going to happen, right? Your lawn's going to get cut. So once you really figure out who created you and what system you're going to believe in, because I think the only system, or I know for a fact, the only way that this is going to change is if you lock into God's system. And if you don't lock into God's system, you are going to be the bicycle on the lawn, riding around for the rest of your life. And as Black people, we've been riding around on the lawn and not getting it cut down because we have not, as a whole, put the system to work. And that's God's system. I'm going to stand on that. It's our channel. Nobody going to fire me. I'm going to say what I want to say. I don't want water cooler and whoever else or the other guys who think we huddling. Facebook, everybody else, we're huddling, okay? Because the system is broken, but I'm going to stand on God's system. And listen, you got to do you. But live long enough and you'll figure out who really created you. So Dr. Eugene Moore, man, my guy, I call him Eugene, y'all, but I'll give him his propers because when you have the JDs, the MBAs, and all the other things on it, you put the work in. So you honor is due. So if I could stand up in church, I would stand up right now and honor you for your fortitude and how you fight for your family, how you fight for your community, and how you showed up in the process of everything that you accomplished. And I am on board with the new system creation. Whenever you do the huddle, you just call me, I will be there. So Dr. Eugene Moore, you are on the box, my friend.
Thank you all so much for having me. Thank you so much for your work. Thank you so much for your legacy, your generational wealth that you're producing. That's something we can talk about next time. That's really important. But I think that if I had to have a parting word, I thought about it as you were speaking. We have to also forget what it means to be a victim, because the system only creates victims. And we don't study victims. We study the criminal mind. So if someone is going to study the mastermind, then you study the system, and you don't become a victim of the system. And if you don't accept victimhood, then you can be successful. But it's hard for you to be successful when you always feel like that knee is on your neck, that proverbial knee is on your neck. And even though it in fact is, you have to understand that you have the strength to come from under it and change the position. So that's what it means to build a system, because the person who put that knee on your neck never had any intention for you to live, ever. So that's it.
Point. Excellent point. So much that it knocked my co-host right off the show. Okay. All right. So thank you very much, Dr. Moore. There he is. He's back. We appreciate your time. And look, for those listening, make sure you call a senior, as my co-host would say. He's back, so I'll let him say it. But we will see you guys next week for another episode of The Chicken Box.
Yeah, this is not a shameless plug. This is a plug. In order for us to keep speaking and to have Black media, we need your support. It's nice to watch us, but for $40, less than 2 Uber Eats, you can have a digital subscription. If you like paper, for $100 a year, you can still get the paper and the digital subscription. Go to afro.com right now, because nobody's ever in 133 years told us what editorials we could write on our paper, who we could talk about, or who we can uplift. And we want to continue that for years to come. Thank you, everybody who has a subscription already, afro.com. Until then, God bless you. Call a senior, send them some food, not from the Red Circle. Oh, is the Red Circle back? Okay, anyway. Send them some food. Go by, bring them something. Do a random act of kindness. They love to hear from you besides a family reunion and a funeral. Until next time, we're going to do this part 2. We're going to figure out the time to get Dr. Eugene back on Who Stole My Innocence. Go get the book. It is ready. It's every place. I need an audio version. I'm an audio guy. So we'll talk about that, Dr. Eugene. I might help you out, get the audio version done. Alana says she has hers. Got you. All right, get the book. Until next time, guys, have a great day.
Thank you.
Talk to you.